Also, just a quick thing about the session. It's a bit different from the description that we had on the website. Initially, Ali was the only one who was going to lead this session and talks only about spyware. But after talking a bit, and we decided that it's better to actually take any opportunity that people interested in spyware, digital security, information security, and kind of create a conversation around this. So we shifted a bit the presentation or the session from just focusing on spyware. We will talk about spyware, but we want to talk a bit about MENA-specific threat landscape and the basic controls that we recommend people to kind of use. Some of you might already know them, might already implement them. Some of you might not. So you might feel that you know everything that's happening. So bear with us if you do, and if you don't, please feel free to ask any questions you want. Okay? Cool. Oh, yes. Hi, my name is Abir Ghattas. I'm the information security technologist with Human Rights Watch. Yeah.
I'm Ali Sibai. I'm the coordinator for the MENA Rapid Response Network and outreach consultant with Siphon. I want to thank Shakib for helping us with the
Thank you, Shakib.
picking. Thank you, Shakib.
Okay, a quick note just before we start about the MENA Rapid Response Network. So in parallel to what's happening to Bread&Net, the MENA Rapid Response that some of the organizations that are present here in the room are member of, it's happening. We're kind of putting together what's called as the MENA Rapid Response, which is a network of organizations and or individuals that will handle, take care of digital incidents that happen within our reach. So it's not limited to MENA, it's within our reach. So if you have any questions about the MENA Rapid Response, you can talk to me or Ali or Shakib or Al-Walid. And we're happy to give you more information, and we're happy to see how your organization can benefit from what we're planning to offer / help with.
Yeah, also we want a timekeeper because we need to wrap up at 11:30. So if you can, okay, so you're going to help us. If you can tell us about around 11:05, so we can open the floor for questions.
Okay. We decided to focus on the MENA region, and I hope I highlighted all the right countries. Well, no? Okay. Right. So as a start, people used to talk about threat modeling, right? Like when we talk about, we want to think about our digital security problem. We want to think about ways to avoid threats and risks. The main word that was thrown around is threat modeling. From a personal experience and working with everybody here in the room, almost everybody, we decided to shift from using threat modeling to risk assessment. Just because if you want to think about it from a technical point of view, when you think about threat modeling, we're actually talking about infrastructure, we're talking about machines, we're talking about stuff that actually way smaller than when we think about risk assessment. So I just, in the first part of the session, I want to talk about how we should look at risk assessment as activists, journalists, people who work on sensitive issues in the MENA, or not really sensitive issues, but people who work under circumstances that might, be dangerous, or our opponent, whether it's a government, it's a private institution, it's just a random hacker. How can we assess it? How can we analyze it? And what should we do in order to kind of avoid it? Shakib? Right. The things that we usually try to cover when we think about a risk assessment is answering these 5 questions. If you also Google it, if you read about it, you will find variation of these 5 questions. You can adapt it to whatever shape you think it fits your needs. So I'm going to go quickly over them, explain them quickly, but my focus personally is going to be on our threat actors, the most active threat actors in the MENA, and the threat landscape, and the basic controls, or like the most important controls that we can put in place as individuals. So the basic thing we need to always be aware of and answer is, what are you trying to protect? So as a journalist, activist, member of an international organization, in whatever capacity you do, so the first thing you need to be aware of is, what are you trying to protect? This includes everything you should think of, like when we think about data. Of course, this session is about digital and information security, so my focus is going to be always around data and the stuff that we need to protect when it comes to our information and data. So when we think about what are we trying to protect, right? So as a journalist, give me something, or anything. What do you think that you guys need to protect? Just throw words. Sources. ما تسمعيني? For the mic. Okay, sorry. You say it and I'll say it back. Okay, sources. Contact lists. Pictures. Files. Sure, أكيد, of course. But from a digital perspective, maybe. Exactly, personal data. Well, basically, your emails, your actual devices, the reports you're working on. When we think about your investigation, or when you think about the pieces that you're gonna publish, you need to also think it by itself, it might not be sensitive, but it plus when are you working on it, and the time you're working on it is the sensitive part. So I want to push you to also think about not just the thing itself, but when are you using it, who has access to it, do they have to have access to it, after you've done with it, did you revoke their access? So there's a lot of questions that we need to start thinking about in order to be able to complete this risk assessment and decide at the end how we're going to move. So what are you trying to protect it from? And here I said what, because it's not always a who, right? So sometimes we're trying to protect our data just from my phone being dropped in my coffee mug. I'm just giving a silly example, but the what here is important. Our threat actor is not always someone, right? It's often someone, but it's not always. So we need to always keep this in mind. And I'm saying this because when we're going to think about the threats, some threats are not related to a person. Some threats are related to, I don't know, our psychosocial well-being. Some threats are related to, we have a revolution happening. Yani, it's not always someone and you're a target. Third, how likely is it that you need to protect it? And this is a very important question. Because when you say emails, I need to protect my emails. I'm going to tell you it's impossible to help you protect all your emails. I mean, it doesn't make sense, right? How many email accounts do you have? How many emails do you receive a day? So when you think about how likely is it that I need to protect something, will help us determine the sensitivity of the thing that we need to protect. Because maybe, I mean, you cannot think that all your emails are protected, but maybe the email of a chain that you're working on when you're doing, I don't know, Panama investigation, this is something that from A to Z need to be protected, and then you will think about how. So, yeah. Okay. And fourth, what would the impact be in case the threat actor succeeds? So a very important note here is, if the threat actor succeeds does not mean we have failed. That's very, very important, because there are some threats that simply we cannot do anything about. You know, if you're a target, if you're worth 1 million from an NSO spyware, They will succeed, but that does not mean that we have failed. So the last 2 points of number 4 and number 5, I'm going to go a bit into them later, more in details. And then number 5, which is the final recommendation of this session, is how do you change your workflow to appropriately respond to the risk you face? Or basically, what are you willing to do to try and mitigate these risks? What we call in the InfoSec word, the controls that you're willing to put in place. Checking. Right. So I'm gonna just, from my from HRW's research and the work we've been doing, these are the threat actors that I'm sure you're all familiar with, Shakib, that are very active in the MENA region. So by categories, we classified them as nation states. So of course you will say, but there's Lebanon, and of course there's Lebanon. Almost every Arab country has some kind of a spyware. It changes a bit. Ali will go more into details because it depends on the money they have and depends on how much they're willing to put effort and of course in their human resources. So Qatar, UAE, KSA, they're of course the richest countries and therefore they have access to a lot of spyware, and Ali will go into details. Non-state armed group, I have to use that terminology, and not terrorist group, which is ISIS, for example. They have a very strong, they had a very strong online army. Cyber criminals, we've seen in Lebanon, Darkera. It was linked to the general security. Ali will talk more about it, but it was executed by cyber criminals. We have something called, there's a group called Oil Rig in Iran, and another group, for example, in Gaza, so they're called Mole Rat. We have the hacktivist groups. There are some groups in Lebanon. We have something called Tempting Cedars, and they're the right wing of the online activist. They're active, they exist, and their threat vector is usually device infection, mostly Android devices. You have private companies, NSO, hacking team. Okay, hacking team no longer exists, but the companies, the softwares that were purchased by hacking team are still being used one way or another. And of course, this is a very important thing. One threat actor that sometimes we don't think about is internal threat actor. So internal threat actor, it can be a staff member in your organization. You always need to be mindful about this. It can be partners, whether partner organization or actual human life partners. And it can be someone you live with, as your roommate. I'm just putting this example here to say that when you think about protecting your information, your data, your devices, we should not exclude anyone from the close circle, because threats, and it has been proven, threats can come from here. Okay. Yes, Shakib.
Can you try a question? Try turning off that light. The switches are right behind you.
Can you not see at all? Let me, maybe it's outside, sorry. Bye. فينا نضيف الدوشة محل حدا بيعرف؟ سوري. عكس حقكم علي. ما بعرف هيدا. ما اوكي كبستهم كلهم والله. طيب احسن طفوا شوي. دو نادا طفي. طيب. So.
شو نكتة؟
كنت عم بهتف. All right. So when we're thinking about threat actors, question that is worth asking, you should ask them, is who have they targeted in the past? So if you've determined that, I'm just going to say whatever, Qatar is your threat actor. who have they targeted in the past? It's good to ask this question to determine their patterns, to determine how they target their, how do they target? What's the time frame of their plan? And what's actually the influence? What did it happen? And most importantly, how successful were they? Because there's a lot of threat actors out there, and they try a lot of things every day. I'm sure you've all received tons of phishing emails or weird SMSs on your phone, but that does not mean that every event that happens related to threat has been successful. So it's always important to ask again, how successful are the threat actors that I think are on my case? Yeah. هفوت على threats وبعدين spyware. Okay. So we talked about the threat actors. Again, you're all familiar with. I'm gonna talk a bit about the threats that were, through the work that we do, are the top threats that happen within the MENA region to MENA activists, journalists, and organizations. Just as a kind of idea, when I started kind of collecting threats, so I have this Excel sheet that has threats in it, and I have about 2,500 threats. There's a million threats out there, whether it's natural stuff, whether it's personal, whether it's police, whether it's... so threats is a very big landscape, but here I'm just going to focus on the digital security threats, which is of course a non-exhaustive list, but this is the most types of threats that are digital security threats and were mapped to the MENA region. So of course you have phishing and scams. Phishing is by far the most used by governments. Egyptians are like leaders in phishing attacks. Maybe Ali will show an example later. Account compromise, it's when someone get their account compromised. It can happen because of phishing or because of something else. Stolen or lost devices and also broken devices. This kind of does not literally translate from a threat actor except the stolen part, but this is a very important threat because of this we lose access to our information. I mean, our phones contain everything. I don't know about you, but it's a very kind of fragile device, but it's a very important device. So people should also think of controls to put in place in order to mitigate broken, stolen, or lost devices. We should always think about that. What if my phone breaks? What if I lose my phone? What happens? What happens to my two-factor authentication codes? What happens to my contact list? Who has access to it? Can I get it back? Can I lock it? Can I wipe it? So if you start thinking about this, you'll put in place, what if I forget it in a taxi? Yani, there's a million scenario that we actually get, like, I just lost my phone. What can you, how can you help me? What can you do? Of course, raid, arrest, and device confiscation. This is a bit... there's like the surprise element in it, so somehow it's not always easy to address and mitigate. But if when you do your own risk assessment or the risk assessment of your NGO or your organization, if you've been raided once or twice or 3 times, then this is likely to happen again. And the likelihood of something the more it's likely to happen, the more you need to consider that you need to put controls in place to kind of mitigate it. Of course, surveillance, both online and offline. And finally, hacked or infected devices. So, I mean, what I'm trying to do here is just give you the right terminologies for things, make you kind of look at them. I know we all know them. You've worked under many of these circumstances, or you've dealt with people who've been who've had these threats. But it's always important to kind of think about like what are the most common threats that we have, and how can we kind of always keep it in the back of our mind in everything we do, in the work we do. How can we adapt if you have our organizational security policy, our information security policy for the work you do, for the organization you have, even for yourself, in order to kind of encompass all of these threats that we've mentioned here. Right, so just as a reminder, the last part just covered number 4 and 5. If you have question about thinking, what is your data, or how, and what are you, like the first 3 questions, feel free to ask. We can talk about it. Feel free to reach out to me outside. Happy to help you with this process. But yeah, in order to stay in the theme of Ali, we're just focusing on 4 and 5. Right.
Yeah, okay. So initially, if you can see here, initially this session was initiated by an article I wrote for Rasif, which was published 2 weeks after Abir left. So if you can see here, the list of around 17 Arab countries or countries who are in the MENA region that imports or have used, or there's a suspicious, they might have used any of these spywares. So the companies or the softwares that we're looking at are called Blue Coat, one of them. Actually, these are the names of the companies. Blue Coat, it's an American company. Gumma, it's a German company. NSO, it's an Israeli company itself, but managed by a US company. BEA, it's a British-Danish company. And Hacking Team, it used to exist as an Italian company. So if you can see here, unfortunately, okay. So the top 5 spyware importers are KSA. They have full score, 5 out of 5. They have tried to use all of these spywares. So Blue Coat, usually it's a spyware that collects data, it's called Blue Coat Inspector. So they collect, in fact, your device collects data, everything. Gumma, it has a program called FinFisher or SpyFin, also the same thing. NSO, it has, and so far here I only mentioned 2, Saudi Arabia and Emirat, but actually last week, or actually 2 weeks ago, we found out that Morocco had used NSO as well. I'm going to talk about it later on. So NSO, technically, they send you they use so-called Zeroday vulnerability, which is a threat that exists on your devices that no one knows about until the day it actually got exploited. BA, they have a mass surveillance system that spies on users. And Hacking Team, also, they have what's called Da Vinci. It's also a software that spies on you in any way possible. And the way you get infected, it's different, and that's why Abir and I were trying to bridge and talk about how things actually happen. So again, the top 5 importers were KSA, 5 out of 5, UAE, 5 out of 5. And the note on UAE, they actually have so-called company called Dark Matter, and they do have in-house capabilities to do whatever they want in terms of infecting devices. Egypt, 3 out of 5. لازم تشتغلوا أكتر. Bahrain, 3 out of 5. And that's it. And here I mentioned كلهم يعني كلهم. So all of them have used at one point. كلهم يعني كلهم for the non-Arabic speakers. It's one of the slogans of the Lebanese protest, which means all of them, it means all of them. So all of them have used a spyware at one point. Yes, I will. What?
What is the timeline?
So the timeline of this is between 2010 until now, literally.
Can I ask you, because the chart is not clear, what's the weakest link here? The country that has...
That's a question for Abir later on. Okay, so technically the legend here is not actually what it says. So the I means they have actual purchase or there were negotiation to purchase. The nothingness is there's no information or they never dealt with it. So again, here I said Morocco did not use NSO, but again, 2 weeks ago we discovered that Morocco actually used NSO. So it's open for interpretation and to be updated always.
Just to comment on Tunisia and the use of the
Yeah, okay. Can you send me the link so I can update it? Because I try, okay, so everything that is here is actually referenced somewhere. So if I was not able to get any reference, so I was not able to put as an I or actually happened. Regarding hacking team, if you see, like most of them have used hacking team, and that thanks to someone who hacked hacking team themselves. So they got hacked, and around 400 gigabytes of data were published and disseminated online. So because of that, we found the contracts, the contacts, and the how much money they paid, and so on. And actually, a sequel of this article is going to be the economical impact. And Diane, I can publish it on Daraj, it's fine. Is the economic impact on how much money they have paid. A small example, it's a reference by Al Jazeera that like the contract between NSO and Saudi Arabia is $55 million to contribute to this hacking. For example, NSO and Mexico in 2012, it was $20 million. Okay, Shakib? Yes.
Just about Iraq. Iraq government did use spyware tools, only Kurdistan region government, because Iraq government, they shut down internet.
Again, there is different threat models, different actors. I'm not sure if we mentioned any Iraqi. There is one, I can't remember. Yeah, hacking, yeah, okay. So most probably they have used other stuff, or maybe they have used, imported some, nothing maybe was published. So if you have a link or what it's verified, we can add it. Okay, so I'm gonna here talk about 5 case studies that had the most media attention. That doesn't mean these are the only ones, but these are the most cases that have media attention, and we're gonna a little bit have some few insights on them. The first one is Ahmad Mansour. He is an Emirati activist. He sort of was related to Human Rights Watch at one point. So he's an Emirati activist. The company that did the attack was NSO. The tool was an iPhone Zeroday vulnerability. I'm gonna show you now. And the cost was $1 million to target only Ahmad Mansour. And that was in 2016. And this is like sort of verified by Citizen Lab, which is a research center at the University of Toronto that usually does all of the research on spywares. The tech advancement is highly sophisticated. So actually what happened here is NSO, they sent Ahmad Mansour a text message the first time. It says in English, some new prisoners have been tortured in UAE. This is a link, and this is the link. So Ahmad Mansour actually did not press on this link the first day. 2 days later, they sent him another link, same message. He did not click on it. Actually, he forwarded the message to Citizen Lab. So if he actually pressed on this, his entire device would have been compromised. Compromise means everything on the device could have been mirrored and copied to NSO. Ahmad, he did not click, but the researchers actually did click and tried to. So Ahmad Mansour is now in prison for a 10-year sentence.
They killed him even though they didn't copy his phone.
Yes, I mean, yeah, just to see how much they're trying to target him. Anything else to add on this, Abir, you think?
No.
Okay. Yes, what's the question? Okay. Next one. Darkera, local, Lebanese, made in Lebanon. Yes. No, we're not sure who are the actual actors, but we know that the attack was launched from the building of the Lebanese General Security. Okay? That's what's on record. but it was actually published by EFF and Lookout. Anyone from EFF, you know. So the building is in the Lebanese General Security Building, and the attack was located from there. Technically, what they were doing was spreading around fake applications, like fake Siphon, fake Signal, fake WhatsApp, fake Tor. So all of these security tools that we actually recommend to use, they were trying to compromise them and send a fake versions of them or anything close. So their model was actually they're trying to send people like military personnel, enterprises, medical professionals, activists, journalists, lawyers, education institutes. And it's not only for Lebanon, it's actually for 21 other countries. So they're trying to infect as much people as possible. And it doesn't, again, as we said, they are from a building inside the general security, but we're not sure if it's them. It seems they were like hired, like Abir said, cyber criminals to do such activities. So technically, all of these data was published, not like discovered online, open links, not protected, around 80 gigabytes. So all of these data were actually public. Okay, and they were trying to fish everyone by actually sending to some people to use this app. It's super secure. It gets you more safe online. So use it. So that's how they were trying to infect people. The cost of doing this is actually super cheap. You just need, and most of these are open source applications. So just trying to manipulate a bit the permissions, the code a little bit, and you can actually make a fake app and the same functions. The tech advancement is between, yes?
Did they target Android only or iOS? Did they target Android or iOS?
Definitely it's only Android. Because you can, on Android, you can download an application from unknown source. For Apple, you need to have a jailbreak to do that. So it was only Android. The tech advancement is between low to medium. So you need like a regular encoder to do this. It doesn't need millions of dollars. So it could be like a $50,000 thing and affected around, the report says around 4,500 people who were infected in this. Nilefish. It's made in Egypt, local. It was a report that was published by the Egyptian Initiative for Personal and Person Rights, yes. All the data says that the actor is the Egyptian authorities. And the target were around 7 CSOs and journalists inside Egypt. The cost is super cheap. It was a phishing. I'm not sure if you can see this clearly, but it was simple email. It's called security.policycheck@gmail.com. So they're actually trying to convince users that this is an email actually sent by Google themselves and ask them to put their username and password. So actually they can get their username and password. That's how actual phishing is executed. And the cost is super cheap. And it only depends on our behavior and how we actually interpret such emails. Again, tech advancement is super low. I mean, phishing link is one of the first attack vectors that actually occurred. Yes, Walid?
Can you tell us more about the impact?
The impact of what happened. So technically, they were able to access emails, drive, like the content of the emails of 7 Egyptian CSOs. And technically, all of these CSOs were linked to a case of foreign funding. So they're trying to...
Something to add is that they hacked accounts.
Just a quick thing to add. They actually hacked activist accounts, and they used those accounts to hack into other people accounts. So yeah, I mean, when you receive when when I receive an email from Ali, I might click on the link. So it was very effective.
Shakib?
Look, can you go back? I just want to add something about. One thing to mention, about phishing emails, and it's a good case to talk about the Egyptians and their phishing attacks. They actually evolved and they learned. So the first wave of phishing attacks is like click on this Google Drive link, get access to this. So they would ask for authorization to access your drive, right? That was the first round. Lately, I think you're gonna show it after. No, you're not gonna show it? Okay. So, a couple of months back, Amnesty released a new report about a new trend of phishing attack in Egypt, so we used to say if you use two-factor authentication, right, it will protect against some people having your password. So if I stole Ali's password, if he uses two-factor authentication, which I'll explain in a bit if you don't know it, I will not be able to access his account. The new trend of phishing attacks that were discovered and kind of analyzed is that through something called OAuth access, where instead of actually capturing someone's password, they capture the token, the access token that allows you to access the drive. So they bypassed, so they learned, developed, and now they can bypass two-factor authentication.
Yeah. Like what Abir is saying, technically, for example, when you want to sign in for a new account, they actually tell you if you want to use Facebook. So this step, when you go from Facebook, you give actually Facebook the access to use your username, blah, blah, blah. So this step, they have used similar step for different other softwares to take the access and get into someone's email. Or actually they can read all the contacts, all the emails, without actually having any password.
True. And one more thing is that email is like the worst thing invented ever. It's so insecure. Does anybody object? No. Wallahi, it's so insecure. It's horrible. If I have like a magic wand, I will delete emails because everything can be faked. Everything. Or spoofed. So really being very, very mindful of kind of any suspicious or any email you get, because it's really something that can be completely transformed, and headers can be added, subject can be changed, everything can be changed basically in an email, in a simple plain email. Okay.
Yeah, one thing that I did not say before, for example, Syria were able to purchase Blue Coat through a company in Dubai. So because Syria had an embargo on any technology use, so they bought it from a Dubai-based company who actually bought it from Blue Coat. So they circumvented what happened, and actually the only technology out of the 5 that I mentioned were used in Syria is Blue Coat, because they got it from an illegal way. Khashoggi and Abdulaziz. So technically, and that's very important thing, on October 1, 2018, Citizen Lab actually published the report on Omar al-Abdulaziz, who is a Saudi activist who is against the rule in Saudi Arabia, and they hacked him, and they used actually NSO to hack him through this link. They sent him a DHL, he had the shipment from DHL, and told him to click on this link. It seemed that he actually clicked, and his phone was compromised. So because of that, we might analyze that's the way that they got to Khashoggi's phone as well. So the report was published October 1. Khashoggi was killed October 2. Okay? So, and Khashoggi and Abdulaziz were in constant communication all the time. So it might that they knew what Khashoggi was talking about through Abdulaziz. Okay, so the target was activists and journalists. The cost, I mean, Ahmad Mansour was 1 million.
This is reported to be at 6 million.
Yeah, exactly. Thanks.
We don't know, but reported.
Maybe less, maybe no, or it could be part of the package that is 55 million. Whatever. So again, the tech advancement is super sophisticated, and again, the only way for you to get compromised is by actually clicking the link. Next one. Now, as Abir was saying initially, is sometimes if you fail by protecting yourself, that doesn't mean that we actually failed. Why? So in May 25, it happened that WhatsApp said that many of the users were compromised by actually receiving weird missed calls in the middle of the night, and these missed calls were not actually recorded. Some of them were recorded, some of them were not recorded. If you can see here, one of the cases. So someone got, in April 1, 2 missed calls back to back from a weird number.
It's not a weird number, it's a Swedish number.
I mean, for the contact. It's a Swedish number, okay. Thank you. So technically what happened is NSO again, they had a new new spyware that's called PKS3 that actually can get you infected without clicking. They just give you a missed call on WhatsApp, that's cool, and you get infected. The number of people there were, again, this is according to Citizen Lab, the number of people who were affected, the number is 1,400 people worldwide. Out of these is around 100 plus activists. I know myself around 4 or 5 of them that got infected. The cost, super high. Tech advancement is super sophisticated. Yes? So this was only WhatsApp and happens to be on iPhone and Android. And later on, like I think 2 weeks ago, WhatsApp starting sending this message and telling everyone who got infected that they got infected. And now WhatsApp are trying to sue NSO globally. Omar Abdulaziz is trying to sue NSO. Amnesty are trying to sue NSO. I'm not sure who else is trying to sue NSO. And Mexico, someone in Mexico, DR3D, they're trying also to sue them.
An important thing to note here is that this does not work anymore, because so the way things sometimes, most of the time how it works, NSO discover, I'm just going to call it a bug. So something that is wrong in WhatsApp's code, and by wrong means they can use it. Okay, it's a vulnerability. I'm going to talk a bit about it later. People, they refer to it as Zeroday. So when the developers and the researchers in NSO or in other spyware companies find vulnerabilities, they rarely / never disclose them. So if you're an ethical hacker, whatever, doing research, security research, if you find a vulnerability, you disclose it, you get money for disclosing it, whatever. What they do is they build software around that to exploit this vulnerability. So, but once it's out, what happened is it took them some time. It took them about, a month, a bit more, for WhatsApp to patch this vulnerability, to fix the code. And this means this does not work anymore right now.
One thing about Ahmad Mansour's case, so technically, Citizen Lab, they actually found the bug, let's say, and they did not publish the report until they talked to Apple. It was a bug in iOS 9, so technically Citizen Lab and Apple, they coordinated the responses. So a few, maybe hours after Citizen Lab published the report, iPhone have pushed like an emergent update for their system, so it won't be like exploited by someone else. So it was like a coordinated act between iPhone and Citizen Lab. So again, the first link that was targeting Ahmed Mansour doesn't work. Like a few days later, did not stop working. Most probably the one about Omar Abdulaziz and Khashoggi's one probably stopped working, maybe. The WhatsApp one stopped working. So again, just trying to bridge again to Abir. Some of the costs are super low, super cheap, advancements super cheap or low, and sometimes super high and high cost. So if they want to target you, they can target you disregarding what you do, but it's important to look at your behavior. Your turn. Yeah, so it's important to manage your behavior and see, like, one part of the security is behavior. Abir.
You're done?
Yeah.
طيب. I'm going to talk a bit now about the controls. We've briefly mentioned them throughout the examples, but I want to kind of summarize them again and go over it. Shakib? So, basic control. Update everything. And then restart. I'll talk a bit about the restart. But the update everything part is so important because, like WhatsApp, like iOS vulnerabilities. So if you do not update your app or your operating system that you work on regularly, as often as possible, that means, or we work with the assumption that any not updated app has security vulnerabilities. So if you update your app, you are operating on the most secure version of whatever you're using. It goes for your computer, it goes for your phone, for your iPad, for your Kindle, for your iWatch, for anything that can be updated. Please update everything. The restart part is for two things. Computers, phones, they need to rest, they need to kind of like, you know, as we need to sleep. But an important thing about restart, there are some malwares that research showed that they do not persist after a restart, which means you can do whatever you want on your phone, the malware will still exist. Let's say you're infected. You can update it, you can download a virus, antivirus, you can try and, I don't know. The moment you restart, it's actually what kills the malware. So think about it like a, well, actually a virus, what's a malware? So it doesn't, so what kills it is restart. They cannot persist the way they're coded, they cannot live again or after a restart. So, you know, just restart your phone every now and then. That's really, really important. Same for your computers. So this is the basic control. Please do it. And okay. And I don't know if you'd like to do it right now. If you will open your app store and just see how many apps needs to be updated. Please update them. Turn on automatic update when you connect to a Wi-Fi if you don't want to spend your data. But updating is very, 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 very important. Okay. So I put these controls in this way because every recommendation here or every control, we can talk about it for 3 hours. How to do it, why we need to do it. If you're interested to know more, there are plenty of very good documentation out there. You can check something called SSD from the EFFs. They have the best, I think, guides because they're up to date. You can check SMEC's latest blogs because they're also in Arabic if you need something. So I'm going to go one by one, talk quickly about them, and if you have any questions, please ask me.
And the rapid response network.
Yeah, and the rapid response network, of course. So I'm going to start with two-factor authentication. So two-factor authentication, there's more slides about it بعد شوي. So it's basically something you know and something you have. So it's two-factor authentication adds an extra layer of security to your online account. And the threat this mitigates is credential compromise. شو يعني if I lose my password, if I have two-factor authentication, or if my password is compromised, it's not I lose my password, having two-factor authentication on will protect my accounts. Side channel verification. This is a very important control against phishing attacks, against account compromise, against scams. Verifying is super, super important. An important thing about verification is first of all, you should not, when you want to verify something, you should not verify it using the same channel that the message has been delivered on, right? So you should assume that the channel you think it's suspicious is compromised, and you to use a secondary channel for verification. If you get an email, text me. Did I really send you that email? Use, I don't know, see Ali, or is it really your account? So verification is part of our behavior. It's not a technical control, but it's a very important behavioral control.
Or for example, if someone added you on Facebook and you don't know who's that person, and you saw they have few mutual friends, actually go and ask one of them if they actually know them. Because using that person on Facebook, they might send you phishing links, malwares, blah, 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 whatever. So verifying who you're talking to as well is very important. So that's part of the verification.
Use a password manager. That's very important. Like shower, brush your teeth, use a password manager. Who uses a password manager? That's not a lot.
Who uses password
like
manager?
really uses a password
manager?
manager.
Who's gonna use a password manager?
شفت وسام وطى ايده. لا, okay. So random number, how many online accounts do you have? Average.
50.
40, 50, 60, 10, 5, right? Okay. Do you have 40, 50, 60, 10 different, really different passwords? No. You do? Do you have a password manager? Hey, okay. I'm talking to those who don't have a password manager. Yes?
I have a different password. I didn't use password manager.
طيب. Are they really different or it's a pattern? طيب. تمام. Good. Some people are gifted. I can't memorize. Yes. عفوا. Perfect. If we don't want to go there, just the recommendation of using a password manager is very important. I'm not sure if you heard of this website, Have I Been Pawned, which is a website that if you put your email address, it tells you if it has been part of a leak. And usually a data leak can contain your password, can contain your hashed password, your username, your password, email address. So people, or like when unauthorized access to accounts happen, doesn't always happen because we're targeted, right? It happens because someone collected a big amount of data leaks and they have a big password list and they're just trying, and they're not really trying. There's a supercomputer sitting somewhere trying to crack or like to get access to your account. We tend, if we don't use a password manager, we tend to reuse password. We all do it. It is, unless in this case, it's not really humanly possible to memorize 50, 60, 70 strong passwords. So you can memorize 60 different words, yeah, sure, but I'm talking about strong passwords. So the recommendation of using a password manager, it's very important. It can be a hassle at the beginning. There are different options. It can be cloud-based. It can be non-cloud-based. You can use whatever you want, actually, as long as you think about it. Like if you want to use a password manager that is on the cloud, which I do, I also do the stuff to whatever needed to be done to actually secure my online account, the online account of the password manager. I also use an offline password manager. I decided that for some stuff, I don't want to save it on the cloud. I want to save it there. So it's a nice exercise to go through to think about: are you willing to protect yourself, protect your online accounts? If yes, then you need to consider at least using a password manager and turning on two-factor authentication. It can be a bit of a hassle, but I'd rather go through a bit of a hassle. I mean, eventually you'll get used to it and it's over, rather than just being vulnerable while I can really protect myself. Device encryption. Okay, it's important to encrypt. Why? Because if people get a hold of your devices and they're unencrypted, we can 5 minutes? Wow. Okay.
We can have more, but for questions.
Okay. So unencrypted data can be read, بكل بساطة. So if you encrypt your data and people get a hold of it, it will be like a black box and they cannot decrypt it unless they have the key, but they should not have the key. iPhones are encrypted by default if you turn on Face ID, Lock ID, Touch ID. MacBooks, if you turn on Firewall, that means you've encrypted your hard disk. Windows, unfortunately, عندهم BitLocker, not unfortunately, but like for professional and enterprise, they have BitLocker. Other options can be like VeraCrypt or stuff like that. If you have any question, it's a bit of a technical thing, so please let me know. I'm going quick now because we only have 5 minutes. Circumvention tools, such as VPN, Tor, and Siphon, all of them fall under the category of circumvention tools. They give you privacy, encryption, and in some cases, of course, they circumvent the censorship. Use VPNs if you're in if you're on open Wi-Fi. Please use VPNs because it basically kind of like put all your traffic into a tube, and it's black and it's not transparent, so people cannot see what you're doing. Where you're going, the data you're transferring. It's important. We all travel, we all work from cafes. I would say any public Wi-Fi, including now here. So basically the idea, if a Wi-Fi is trusted, if you trust everybody connecting to this Wi-Fi. So you all connected right now to Antwerp. If you trust everybody connected to Antwerp, don't use a VPN. Even then, you should use a VPN. So that's the idea, because people can just for fun turn on their computer and sniff the internet. And
actually, like if someone had a worm on their laptop, so the worm actually would transfer all like throughout the entire.
Some worms, yeah.
Like worm is like one sort, like it's a malware and similar to virus. So it actually transfers from one device to another automatically.
Mm-hmm.
So if someone had this worm on their device, it would actually transfer to everyone who is on the Wi-Fi.
Yeah. And finally, wipe and restore. And I say this because it's not really a control. It's something that you start from a clean slate. If you think your phone is compromised with what you want to call a Zeroday, you can't do anything about it. The only thing you can do is wipe it, restore it to factory settings. It's a kind of like last thing you can do, but at least it gives you the reassurance that from the moment you've wiped your device, you have a clean device. So if you think your devices are infected, just wipe them. Shakib?
Except the firmware on the firmware that's not.
Yeah, okay, then.
Update the firmware.
Throw the device away if you want to be really safe.
Come again?
Sorry, I mean the firmware that you cannot touch because that's the one that connects to the network. I'm just saying that this is just one scenario where I assume wiping it doesn't.
Does anyone want to comment on this?
What you're saying is very, 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 very unlikely. So infected firmware is, first of all, there is a need for very high sophistication, technological sophistication to be able to infect the firmware on a device. So
you need physical access.
Walid?
Just to say that some people install like hacked operating system or modified operating system even on their phone. So, I mean, you can have that inside those systems. Also, there is possibility to have malware on the BIOS. So, I mean, I don't think we are going to cover all the threats, but the solution you are exposing cover, let's say, more than 90%.
Yeah, and we're assuming that you're using ما بعرف. Yeah, not third party, or like at least you trust the apps that you download. Shakib?
So, if you're at risk, don't download a custom mod, or if you really need to, check one that's been audited.
Okay. A thing I always like to mention is controls can fail. So it doesn't mean that if you use a password manager, then you're safe if all the passwords you've stored in the password manager are the same. It kind of like defies the purpose. So controls can fail. We use a password manager to generate strong, unique passwords and don't go through the hassle of memorizing them. So if they're identical, you just imported your old password into the password manager. ما كتير عملنا شيء. Encryption. So encryption works if your laptop or your phone is shut down, because in order to encrypt data, it should be at rest. So data, if it's moving, you cannot encrypt it. So if, let's say, part of your risk assessment, border crossing, so you're traveling, okay, and you're coming to Lebanon. I'm just giving an example that probably will never gonna happen. You're coming to actually it does happen. You're coming to Lebanon and you think you might be stopped, and just the idea of you thinking you might be stopped, you should shut down your laptop, not just close it like this. You should shut down, because when you shut down your laptop or your, let's talk about the laptop for now, it's when encryption is invoked. Other than that, your data is not encrypted. The moment you're separated from your laptop, they can grab stuff.
We can also talk about WhatsApp and their backup.
Yes. Oh. WhatsApp backups are not encrypted.
So
Android WhatsApp backups are not encrypted because they're on the cloud, on Drive. So they're like plain text.
So technically, even if your conversation on WhatsApp is encrypted and it works,
yeah, your WhatsApp backups are not encrypted. Right. Secondary working devices. I included this here because some people try to, like, part of digital hygiene, they try to separate their work devices from their personal devices. If you use that, I mean, if you have this as a case, and it can fail when you don't actually separate them. So you can have two phones, but both phones have your contact list. Both phones have access to your Twitter. Both phones have access to your Facebook. So basically you have one phone that is replicated. So, and I can go on and on about how controls can fail. So just to say, it's not like a bulletproof solution. There is no one solution for everything. Shaki? Okay, this is kind of like a summary. So any technical control can be subverted based on the threat environment, and every activist/person working in the MENA region can/should build their specific risk assessment model. MENA threat environment is complex and it keeps changing and evolving. And I like to just stress على آخر نقطة on the last point that it is complex and it is evolving. We think like, yeah, what do they know? They barely ما بيعرفوا يضربوا computer, whatever. No, it's not about what do they know. It's about the tools they have, and they have tools. They just need to plug your phone into things and they have access. So we should always be aware that, like, just don't take it for granted and go through the exercise of sitting one day, drink coffee, and answer these 5 questions and see where is a control that is missing from your end and how you should work into implementing it. Banadura.
How can you tell?
Tell what?
Like how someone can tell if their phone is hacked?
You
Is there
can't.
any indicators?
You really
internet
can't.
connection
Like-
so slow.
No, because you could apps can be updating in the background, so your phone is lagging. Your battery is old. You cannot really tell that your phone is infected. And I get this question, like part of my work at HRW is we do forensics on devices. And it's usually a gut feeling, be like, my phone is hacked. It's rarely that their phone is hacked. It's rarely that WhatsApp is hacked. Yeah. They know about the conversation because someone took a screenshot of it. So seriously, like the percentage of phones being hacked is not هالقد likely. Yeah. Your phone is infected with an adware or a malware, that is more likely, and it is not because you're targeted. It's because probably you use an Android phone and you downloaded an app that is a free app and it installed an adware on your phone. So people come to me be like, but I have these pop-ups, I'm hacked. No, there's an adware on your phone. It can be removed. Same applies for your computer.
One thing, like for example, the WhatsApp hack, like some of the victims, let's say, they actually got missed calls, like the missed calls were recorded on their phone. Some of them, they were not recorded. So by mistake, they knew that they were hacked because they felt like their conversation are being like talked about somewhere else. So you can't actually know that you're hacked, but you need to do the controls anyway.
I mean, we're out of time, but I just thought we should talk about phishing quickly. Or no. Okay, phishing is when someone sends you an email in order to, mostly credential harvesting, they want to get your password. Sometimes what they do is they tailor the email for you. This is not like general phishing, but we can talk about it later. Okay, all these channels, phishing can be delivered through it, even on the phone. Because one thing from a phishing attack, what they want also is information. So if you provide information on the phone, you've basically made their phishing attack successful. So it's successful when you click a link, when you share information, when you provide access, or when you download and open a file. Sometimes just downloading the infected file does not do anything most of the time. It should be a very smart malware that auto-installs. But most of the time, it's downloading and opening something that triggers...
unless it's NSO.
Unless it's NSO, of course. A quick thing about this, I like to explain it because people like to throw around the word 0 days. So how much should I be worried about 0 days? I mean, you shouldn't be worried about it because we cannot tell when is a 0 day, there is a 0 day, because if we know about it, then it's no longer a 0 day. And
actually published.
I just want to explain the word. So 0 days, it's called like that because the developer who did this thing, who built this app or whatever, have 0 days to fix it because I discovered something and I put it out there. So everybody knows that there's a vulnerability and the people who can fix that vulnerability have 0 days to fix it. That's where the name comes from. And the longer the days, the worse it is. If it's been like 29 days, so they have been, this bug is still out there and happening for 29 days. So
yeah, for example, people who are still using, for example, Windows XP, they're very sure they are getting
easily.
It might take you 3 minutes on the internet. Actually, there's a website that tells you how many minutes you need until you get infected. Maybe XP now, you need 2 or 3 minutes and you get infected easily.
Shakib, okay. I mean, we can stop and ask questions, or we can quickly go through the slides, whatever you want. We stop. Okay. Okay. That's it. If you have any questions, just ask Ali, me, Walid, Shakib, Usama. There's a bunch of very good digital security people here in the room and everywhere.
So, any questions? So it's now open for questions. Osama, you have a question?
In addition to أحكي بالعربي أو okay.
I can't hear you.
You can't hear me? You can hear me now. Okay. So in addition, I think regarding 0 days, there is a market, a world market for 0 days. Government can buy 0 days from the internet, from people who sell it on the internet. And there is one big company that is very famous that is called Zeroday, so Zeroday, where they say, for example, they ask people to submit 0 days, so to provide, let's say, vulnerabilities and exploits, and they sell them to government, maybe to companies, to the mafia. And you can check that website and see how much every 0 day cost, or every 0 day cost approximately. Yeah. So if you want to talk about this, maybe we can check it later.
We don't have that much money. One last thing, and does anybody have another question? No. Okay, then I would like to leave you with this slide. That if you don't want to use a password manager, and this is the recommendation of really how you can have a strong, I crossed out the word password and start thinking about passphrases, because the most important thing that makes a password strong is the length of it, not necessarily how many special characters or numbers you have. It's how long it is. And I'm being nice here, 12 plus characters, but like it's more. So think about like a song you like, or a movie, or a proverb, or I don't know what, and introduce a little bit of modification to it. That's a really good thing if you don't want to use a password manager. And if you do, then you just don't have to worry about this. Yeah, thank you. That's it from my end. Do you have anything to add?
So technically, if you're using a password, like for example, you can use a very weak password, but if you use two-factor authentication, that's gonna enhance your security, like another step of security. So if there is the option to use two-factor authentication, please use it, and don't use it through SMS, because that's another session we can talk about. So please do use two-factor authentication through the apps or tokens like the YubiKeys. Abir, بدك تحكي?
Yeah, that's it. I just wanted to show them this. No, just use it via an app, not via text messages. Examples in Egypt and in KSA were text messages. First of all, text messages are plain text, so if someone is watching you, they can see the messages you're sending, so just don't use text messages at all. Yeah, use an app like Google Authenticator, Authy. Authy is good because you can generate backup, and like it's multiple devices if you're into that. And a very important thing about two-factor authentication is the moment you turn on two-factor authentication for something, please generate a backup code. Because let's say all my two-factor authentication are on my phone through the app, and I don't know, Sandy stole my phone, and I need access to my phone got stolen, I dropped it somewhere, whatever, I lost my phone, I cannot be locked out. So the moment you turn on two-factor authentication, generate your codes, print them, put them somewhere safe, put them in your password manager, wherever you want to save them, just save them somewhere, but do not activate 2FA and not have a backup code. Okay, now Anja, thank you. Thank you.